Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and today is our Game Week 33 National League predictions. Of course, once again, I'm joined by Sam. Of course, we haven't had Paul for a number of weeks now. I am pleased to announce he he should be back for Thursday's podcast. But for tonight, I'm delighted to say that I am joined by Sam Collyer, who's, of course, stepping in once again. So I do appreciate you coming on, Sam.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to be on. I'm looking forward to it today. Yeah, it's a good little match, good little game week that we've just had. So be good to talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit about the teams, and get some predictions in for next midweek.
Yeah, of course, we're doing this on a Sunday. We haven't done it on a Sunday for a long time, but there's that many games on Tuesday and Wednesday. I thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to actually do a prediction show, preview show for this game week, as well as some huge games that we need to discuss. First versus second. We've got a derby in there, a bottom of the table clash as well. So there's certainly going to be a lot to discuss tonight. It's good to see that there's a fair few of you joining us already tonight. Over 30 of you in, and we're only a minute in, which is good numbers so far. We'll come to the live chat as that's been quite busy so far. But please remember to like and subscribe. Also, please check out our sponsors, Cards Accepted. There'll be a link in the description for you to do that. If you use that link, you'll get 50% off your card machine. No contracts or monthly fees. And also, if you'd like to become a channel member and to support myself further, it's just £2.99 a month. I know we've got one or two channel members that are actually in the live chat. If you do that, you can use custom emojis for your club in the live chat, if you're into that, I should say, because I know there'll be a lot of older people out there that'll be going over the head. But also, what you can do as well is you can get early access to certain interviews that we do. Interviews will be available to everyone. It's how I've always done my shows. Is I'm not going to make them exclusively to certain people. But what I will do is you will get early access to those interviews. For example, the Dean Brennan interview that we did a couple of weeks ago, I think you got about 3 or 4 days early access. So it is you do certainly get perks from it, but I do appreciate anyone that just supports the channel further. Coming to the live chat, then we've got Yorkie the Lion who's here. He said, hello all. He said, still recovering from Ebbsfleet away yesterday. Yeah, a big win for York, wasn't it? For me personally, I don't know what your thoughts were on it, but I did back York to win, but I did see that as a bit of a potential banana skin, because you look at Ebbsfleet recently, they've been a little bit more competitive, haven't they? Particularly getting a point away at Rochdale.
Yeah, for me, the first shock for me was Hinchelwood again changing it up a little bit. Opted after scoring a hat trick to the bench Josh Stones, which I thought was a bit personally maybe something I wouldn't have done. But obviously you've brought in Ollie Pearce, he's gone and got the brace, and it's won you the 3 points. Ebbsfleet did go 1-0 up, didn't they, in the first half, which was soon chalks off. But like you said, it was a bit of a scare. It looked. It took York. It seemed to take York a little bit of time to kind of settle into the game and find that kind of like dominant play style that they often do. But Ebbsfleet, they are coming together a bit more as a side now. They aren't the kind of side that would kind of just turn over for you like they were a few months ago, and they are going to be a test. So it's a big 3 points for York in the end.
We're coming into that game week as well. I thought in the top 4, I thought all 4 sides would have a difficult game. 2 of them, of course, dropped points. One of them losing as well, which was quite a shock. But also the top 2 did struggle in their games. York getting through. I don't think they'll particularly care. You go to places like Ebbsfleet. Yes, they're struggling on paper. You should be turning them over. But I think at this time in the season, for your Yorks and your Barnets, it is just about winning games. It doesn't matter how they come, it's just winning games. I mean, that's something that York did. Barnet themselves as well, against an out-of-form Solihull Moors side. Solihull a lot better this game week, of course, still losing to Barnet, but they did give them a fairly good game, of course, equalising before Barnet went on to take the lead and come away 2-1 winners as well. Of course, we've also got Chris, who's in tonight, who's a Chesterfield fan. I still enjoy seeing a lot of the old faces that we haven't seen for a while because of promotions and relegations still pop up. Chris has said, hi, Luke, Chesterfield fan here. What's your thoughts on Carlisle most likely being in the National League next season? I think for the podcast, it's good. And I think it is for the league as well, because they're a big club as well. When Oldham came down into this division, it was quite a shock. And I think everyone were like, oh, we've got, it's a good away day, that, a big club as well, that's going to bring a lot of attention to the league. You know, even when you had your Notts counties who came down as well. For you, I'm sure that's not something you'd be looking forward to, because it'd be a long way if you wanted to do that away day, wouldn't it, from working?
Yeah, it's a bit of a trek up to Carlisle, that's for sure. But they're another side that it seems almost certain that they're going to end up coming down. They did splash the cash a little bit in January to try and give Mike Williamson the players that he wanted to try and keep him up. Added Callum Whelan, Stephen Wern, Josh Williams, a couple of the old Gateshead players that he's used to using. But I don't really understand the sacking of Williamson after backing him. I understand based on the form, but no, I think they're quite well equipped looking at the team that they've got at the moment for the National League. It is always a bit of a struggle for teams that come down, but I also do think they've got the money to, improve that squad in other areas themselves. And yeah, it's going to be a unique one, a new away day for that's for sure. But yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how they do next season, because they do seem quite well equipped for the division. But you know how it is with the National League and teams coming down; they always seem to there's always that kind of question on how they'll approach it and if they'll struggle or not. Forest Green kind of seems to be one of the only newly relegated teams in recent years to actually have not kind of phased into that mid-table or bottom half section, fresh off the relegation.
It's looking good for me as well. If you look in League Two towards the bottom, the bottom 5 are all Northern, and then it's Gillingham. Gillingham at the moment, I think 6 points. No, they're actually 8 points clear of the drop. So it'd be a bit of a surprise if they came down. You've got Morecambe, Tranmere, Accrington, all down there. Harrogate. For me personally, that they can stay up there. I'm not too fussed about them. But for Halifax, there's some really good away days there. But I think for the Southern fans, they'll be a little bit frustrated. I think they got their turn this year with Sutton and Forest Green coming down, so it's our turn once again now.
Yeah,
we've got Harry who's joining us as well, a York fan. Evening, welcome to the stream. And then we've had Jordan, who is of course a channel member as well, and he's a Barnet fan, I believe. He said York getting battered on Tuesday. James is in. He said, "All right, lads, welcome to the stream, James." We've had Kevin as well, who's come in and said, "Hey up, lads, how's it going?" He's either a York or a Halifax fan, I'd guess, to be honest, based on the A up. And then we've had David. I have not seen you for a while, David, in the live chat. Of course, a Maidenhead fan. It's good to see you back. Welcome to the stream. And then, of course, York here. I knew this would be brought up. We'll see, Jordan. Almost 1,000 York tickets. So, yeah, that is some phenomenal support for this division. I think overall, when you see like Oldham take a large following to like Rochdale, you're impressed by that. But I think for a Tuesday night, considering the distance, I know York are doing well in the league, but that is still very, very impressive.
Yeah, that's unbelievable numbers, especially like you said, a Tuesday night game, and it's still some journey. It's a northern side having to come down to London. Yeah, you can only really applaud that. The form that they're in as well. Such a big game. That could be a huge, huge difference maker come Tuesday as well. Because Barnet, they very much have made that home ground a fortress. So if the fans can come in, they can kind of shake it up a little bit, but put a bit more pressure on the Barnet players. That could be a huge that could have a huge effect on the 90 minutes that there is to play.
And then we've had Caroline who's come in and said, "Good evening, not sure what to say about us." Yeah, Aldershot, of course, struggling at the moment. Of course, Sam with us tonight, a working fan himself as well. You happy to see the downfall of Aldershot? Or I suppose in a way, I don't know, if it were me and I was a working fan, I wouldn't want them to go down, but I'd want them to perform poorly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was actually talking about this with someone earlier, and seeing your biggest rival go down, you're not going to complain. It gives you the bragging rights straight up without question. But you do. It is kind of heritage now for Woking Aldershot to have that fixture over Christmas. For us to kind of or it used to be the double fixture over Christmas, but now it's just the one. But yeah, it would be interesting to see how they fare in the National League South. But also, they'd feel like there's something kind of missing if we weren't to be playing them around Christmas time next season.
I think for you Aldershots and your Dagenhams, I think everyone's had the opinion, well, I certainly have myself, of those two won't slip through the net. They're too good to go down. You look at the squads. You look at Aldershot's manager, Tommy Widdrington, what he did last season. They'll sort it out at some point. And you look at the sides below them improving, and you just think there's not that many sides below them who you could actually. There's not that many sides below them. There's not enough sides below them for them not to. I'm not explaining this well. For them to actually fall into the drop zone. Like they're like the next teams to drop in, and if they carry on the form that they are doing, particularly Dagenham, I know Aldershot are close to the drop zone, but Dagenham, if you look at their form under the new manager, them for me, if they carry on like they are doing, they're certainly going to slip through the net this season, and that'd be awful for Dagenham for them to go into the National League South. I think I see them as quite an ambitious club, and to see them struggling like they are doing, perhaps as well, actually, after having quite a good start to the season, for me, it's a massive surprise. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so on Aldershot and Dagenham as well, I think they're both. I do worry for both of them because momentum's a massive thing at this stage of the season. And although with Aldershot there has been a few, they've gone on a little unbeaten spell. In the league though, you do look at it and it can be a little bit deceptive because there's only one win in that unbeaten spell of I think 11, 12 games in the league. And you can pick up a few draws and those they will be valuable points. But at the end of the day, if you go and lose a game at that point, which they have at the weekends, suddenly relegation's looking a lot closer than you think. But on Dagenham, I personally worry a bit more for them than Aldershot. I think they seem like a side really struggling. There seems to be a few questionable decisions being made at the top as well at Dagenham, and what it does seem like at the moment that the kind of feel around the club is a bit doom and gloom, and they are kind of expecting for a really rocky end of the season. But they both have quality in their sides, and I think they're both more than capable of turning it around. But at the moment, it's not looking good for either team, really, is it?
No, Dion Pereira is another player. There was a lot of talk about him in that first half of the season, and there's not as much, is there now? I know he was actually on the bench, I believe, on Saturday as well for Dagenham. And what concerns me as well is you look at Braintree, a side that have really improved recently, and they're actually level on points now with Dagenham. Which just shows you, the level where Dagenham are now. They're actually a lot closer to the drop zone than what I think a lot of people actually think when they look at them. Aldershot as well. The reason I'm not too concerned about them is, you've mentioned that form there and a lot of draws in there as well. But they have got some big wins. For me, winning at Oldham says quite a lot about them. A poor result on Saturday. I think that's what's kind of made Aldershot fans concerned. I know Robs were quite optimistic about them actually being able to climb away from the drop zone, from being in any doubt of relegation. But he was a little bit more pessimistic, I think, after that defeat to Eastleigh. And you look at some of the games coming up. But it is, I think, a lot more in their hands to actually climb up the table. They've got 2 games in hand on working Dagenham and Braintree. And if they win both of those games, they'd go above both of them. And then you look below and there's Maidenhead there, Wealdstone and Fylde, who've all had some big wins in recent weeks, but are all struggling to get any momentum. And that's something that Braintree have done, isn't it? They've managed to get a bit of momentum, go on a good run of form, and now they've managed to climb away a little bit. And you'd like to think just a couple more wins and they'll be looking to climb into mid-table and won't be in any concern of going down this season.
Yeah, I quite like Braintree as a team. They had a little bit of a bumpy start. There was a few financial issues here and there being, spoken about. But when you look at their actual squad, I think the quality they possess is more than good enough to keep them up, albeit quite a small squad. The likes of George Langston at the back, James Vennings in midfield is a great little player, and obviously, the attacking threats they have in Lisby, who's he's been a standout player this season in the National League. Those kind of players are the kind of they're the kind of assets that will keep you out of that kind of danger. And they have found that, like you said, they found that stability, and they've managed to kick on a bit of momentum. And now they do look like a really tough side to beat. But yeah, like the weekend, it's a massive result for them against Forest Green. That's the kind of that's what momentum can do to a team. It can really can boost the confidence for you. It can really kick you on, and it's got to the point now for them where I think it would be quite a shock to see them go down from this stage now. Whereas if you asked that question maybe 2 months ago, I think you probably would have said they're in quite big trouble. But that's the magic of this division, really. A few weeks can make a huge difference. We could be saying in 3 or 4 weeks' time, Woking are in massive trouble and Aldershot look really safe, or Dagenham are looking really comfortable, and Tamworth could be in big trouble. You know, that's the magic of this division. It's very tight knit throughout the whole league this year.
Shocking draw for Oldham. To be fair, they did better than what I thought they'd do this game week. I actually put them down to lose. Sutton at home. I don't think it's the type of team that would bring the best out of Oldham. You know, they're a very big and physical side. A really difficult side to play against. For me, I think, on paper, you look at that, Oldham being at home, you'd say they should go on to win that game. But that's a really tough game for me. And I know Oldham fans will probably disagree with me on this. I don't actually think that's the worst point in the world, to be honest. We've also had Jordan's come in and said, Yorkie Porkies, Hive is out of Fortress. He's certainly going off tonight a little bit. We've had Christopher who's here as well and said, evening gents, hope you're well. Yeah, I think we're both well. Thank you very much. Then James has actually said, fair play to York, even though it pains me to say, actually, being an Oldham fan. Guys, got to ask, what's your thoughts on 3 up, 3 down? Oh, we've kind of talked this to death a little bit. We did a 2-hour podcast on this. So after this show, I would go and listen to that. There's chapters on there as well, so you don't have to watch the full 2 hours. And then we've had Woking on the up. A good point for them against Tamworth, maybe. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Is it a good point?
Well, it felt like 2 points dropped on the day. The way the game went, it was very much all Woking. Tamworth sat back, but set pieces, long throws, everything they could do to try and put that ball in the box and make it difficult and uncomfortable for us, they did. And I described it on Twitter as we got Tamworth in the end, because they were very direct. You know, they looked to kind of just chuck the ball on the keeper and hope something drops, and that's what happened in the end. You know, a little header across goal late in the game, and it was tapped in. But no, the position Woking are in, points on the board are all that matter at the moment, so it's better than nothing. One loss in Neil Ardley's tenure so far, can't really complain too much, but it definitely did feel like 2 points dropped in the end.
Thomas Season's come in and said 2,000 coming to York next week, Luke, with a sarcastic comment there. I'll just get this up on the screen just to kind of to kind of show everyone. York's population, 141,000. I thought it'd be more than that, to be honest. Halifax's population. Let's have a look at this. UK. Let me just check so they don't put Canada up. We have got, what does it say there? 88,000. So for me personally, no, we will not be bringing 2,000, but with good reason there. I think I've shown that. So yeah, I think hopefully that clears everything up for you, Thomas, there. But we will be coming with noise. To be fair, it's a big game. To be fair, so hopefully we do take a fair few. I'll certainly be there, and I will absolutely love it if we beat you, I have to admit. And then we've also had Lewis who's come in and said, another big game for us, York on Tuesday, like they all are, nothing decided then, but will be a great game for the neutral on paper. And then we've also had delighted to see Oldham failing away. Google search, yeah, okay. I think that's more or less it. For all that, we can get on with the predictions then now, to be honest. We're going to try going a little bit more depth into the predictions. I'm losing my words, to be honest. I'll get the prediction scores up because I have actually updated them this week. Here we go. These are the scores on the doors at the moment. 133 points to 128. I thought I was screwed, to be honest, after Saturday. I got a message from Rob saying he'd worked out. He'd got 12 points. I double-checked it, and he had actually got 12 points. I then worked out the points that I've got, and I got 9. And I thought maybe, just maybe, I'll still be in the lead. And to be fair, I have still got a slight gap. Your last week, Sam, for you and Rob to try and close the gap a little bit more. You certainly have done compared to how it was looking.
Yeah, Sam, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Helping pull out as much as possible, that's for sure.
Yeah, what are you thinking coming into this game week then? A lot of big games, isn't there? Are you quite confident you can make the gap even closer?
I'm never confident with predictions of this league. Anything can happen at this level. It's quite a mixed bag this game week as well. There's a few games that are quite close on paper. I'm finding it harder and harder to predict as the weeks go on because it's an absolute roller coaster this season. But no, hopefully I can get a couple points on the board for Paul and try and narrow that gap a bit more.
I've always wondered what's actually harder. Is it harder predicting games at the start of the season when it's unknown how teams are going to do? Or is it harder actually when you know more knowledge because you read more into the actual predictions themselves? That's a question to you. I don't know what your thoughts are, or I suppose they're both hard, aren't they?
It's a really good question. To be fair, I don't know if it's one I can answer. There's so much. I try and put as much thought as I can into predictions, but at the end of the day, sometimes I look back at some of the results, then look at the prediction I made, and I think, why have I predicted that? What led me to think that? I've overthought it way too much, but that's just how it goes sometimes.
Brilliant. Right, we'll get on with the predictions then. We encourage everyone to actually put your predictions in. I know that's something I've not really mentioned. So in previous weeks, people haven't actually put their predictions on the live chat. I should also mention there's a lot of people, well, the majority actually watch this afterwards. If you are, don't be afraid to comment on any of the points that we've made in this podcast. If you disagree with us or agree with us on any of the points. And also let us know your predictions in the comments as well. Of course, in the live chat, for those who are watching live, you can, of course, put them in as we do it, even if it's just for your own team. This is a quick look at the table at the moment. Of course, these two sides will be facing each other off on Tuesday evening. We're going to leave that fixture until the end of the podcast and go through all the other games first. Of course, Oldham's sitting in fourth. For me, I don't think they're going to change until the end of the season now. I think they'll sit fourth for the rest of the season. And those remaining sides inside the playoffs are Gateshead, Halifax and Altrincham. I think all three sides were in a similar position last year, weren't they? I think they're the three sides that surprise a lot of people. And of course, you've got Rochdale. It is in their hands to actually climb back into the playoffs. They've got a big game, a bit of a derby going to Halifax on Wednesday evening. And then from sides that could realistically get in the playoffs then, where would you say that cut-off point is for you overall?
It's tricky to say, really. Because like you said, the momentum swings quite frequently. I think overall, I think teams all the way down to 12th are probably more than capable of getting into the playoffs, but it would take a hell of a push. I think if we want to go off of the realistic, who can make it and like who's got a genuine decent chance, I think maybe down to 9th. I think Hartlepool and Rochdale have a bit of an outside chance. Obviously, Rochdale more so, given that they have 5 games in hand over Hartlepool. But yeah, it's tricky to say because that top 7 have been considerably more consistent than most sides this season, and Hartlepool, they've just put Limerick in charge. It's hard to say where they're going to go from this season, but yeah, if I had to go off of who I think's got a decent chance, I think the top 9 in the division, but with an outside chance, I think anyone down to 12 could.
Hartlepool, for me, they just draw too many games, and I don't particularly think they score enough goals in individual matches. When they win, they can win by 3 or 4 goals, but they struggle to find that initial goal, I feel, when you actually look at them. You look at that game on Saturday, drawing 0-0 to Maidenhead. Yes, it keeps that unbeaten run at home going, but still, it's 2 points drop that. You look at Maidenhead's position at the moment, and you'd like to think being at home, you could get all 3 points there. The cut-off point for me personally then, I'd probably say Sutton. I don't think any of the other sides are actually capable of getting in the playoffs. Everyone knows my actual predictions of the sides that would get in. I don't think Sutton or Solihull or Southend would actually get in the playoffs this season. But I do think if they got on a bit of a run of form, they could put a case together to get back inside the playoff spots. For me, you look at Southend's form, I don't particularly think it's that impressive. You look at that defeat, who was that against? Maidenhead, wasn't it? And then dropping points to Rochdale, of course, coming from behind. For me personally, I wouldn't write them off yet. But I just think, personally, for me, I just don't think they're good enough going forward to finish inside the playoffs. I think they've only got a plan A. They don't have a plan B. So when they're coming up against certain sides, it just doesn't suit them at all. And they don't know how to play against them. And I think that's the case of, Halifax, they're the type of side that would suit their playing style, whereas perhaps like a Barnet wouldn't at the moment, and the way they play, if that makes sense. Looking towards the bottom then now, of course, we spoke a lot about the relegation battle in the last couple of weeks, and about as many sides that were involved in it. I think from working upwards, I'd say they are all climbing towards safety based on their form as well. Dagenham, they're a side for me, still 5 points above the drop zone. But you look at their current form, I think they haven't won in 12 games or something ridiculous like that. For me, you look at that form, and that's relegation form for me. So yeah, I am a little concerned for them. We'll get on to the predictions then. We've probably done enough waffling, or I have, I should say. Game week 33 we are on now. Starting things off with a bottom of the table clash. We've got AFC Fylde coming up against Boston. Firstly, speaking about Fylde, of course, drawing on Saturday, a 1-1 draw against Dagenham. A good point, or do you think a game where they should have been taking all 3 points?
I think it's quite a good point for Fylde. I think given the position that they're in, any point counts, and I think that'll be a crucial one come the end of the season. They have quality in their team. I think we spoke about it before. There's some real talented players in that side, and I think that could be one of the big difference makers if they do want to try and survive this season. I don't quite know what's particularly gone wrong with them. There's talks of the tactics and however defensively the defensive structure, but there is some players in that team who could play at a much higher standard in this division. And on Boston, I think it's quite a I don't really know what to think with Boston because they are quite cut adrift from that safety zone, but they do have a couple games in hand, and if they are to go and nick a few points, then suddenly that magic escape, that great escape, could be on. But I don't know if they have it in them. I don't know because I don't think they score enough goals. I don't think they're clinical enough. I don't think they have enough experience at the back as well to see out clean sheets. But yeah, it's a tricky one to predict this. So I've gone 2-0 Fylde in this game. I think I think at home, it's a kind of game that they should be hoping to get 3 points from. And I think it's something they need to get 3 points from to try and, bridge a bit more of a gap between them and the drop zone, because they found a few results recently, but, I think they need a bit more conviction in their results and a bit more consistency that can, kind of put them away a little bit now before things get a bit too shaky.
I think it's an uphill battle now for Boston, for me personally. They probably need playoff form at least to survive at the moment. They haven't got a good record against Fylde either. They've actually lost 11 of those 14 games against Fylde in the past. In the past 14 meetings as well. Boston, now, if you actually look at them, they need to be winning more or less, well, you look at a game like this is a must win. Earlier on in the season, you might say a point at Fylde. That's not the worst point in the world away from home. But for me now, Boston, they have to be going into every game with the mentality. We're not here for a point. We're here for all 3 points. And I don't think that'll actually suit. I think that'll actually play into Fylde's hands. You look at the forward power that they've actually got there, the likes of Horton, Massey. We spoke about it now, about them having a number of good individuals, Eustabasi as well. For me personally, it'll allow Fylde to exploit Boston, and I think they will do. And I'm actually going to go for a 3-1 AFC Fylde win. Keep your predictions coming in, guys, and also give us your points as well on everything that you've said. We did actually have Yorkie UK, and it's a great podcast, by the way, lads. Cheers, Yorkie, for your kind comments. We do appreciate it. And then we've had Chris who's come and said, Boston need to play us every week and they'll stay up. Yeah, to be fair, this is what I mean about certain sides suiting others. For example, I don't think it's a coincidence that Boston have done the double over York. I think it's probably the way Boston actually play, and it doesn't suit York. Whereas you actually look at, for example, Halifax, we've got an awful record against Southend in recent years. And I think that's down to the styles of play as well. And I put it a lot down to that as well. And I'm sure, Gateshead, they're another team, never seem to do well against us. I don't think that's a coincidence either, if that makes sense. We'll move on to the next game now. We'll miss that one for now, actually. Ebbsfleet versus Forest Green. Bottom of the league, coming up against the Forest Green side that are still up there, of course, still involved in this title race, but of course had a defeat on Saturday against Braintree, which was a bit of a shock, I suppose. But looking at Braintree's form, was it?
Yeah, when I put my predictions out on Friday morning, I had a few people. I think the probably the most commented thing on it was, I think, people saying they think that Braintree could shock Forest Green, and in hindsight, I probably should have taken that into account because they went and did it. They went and got 3 points. There's been a lot of talk recently about Forest Green and the way that they set up, and we spoke about it on the last podcast I was on, whether all these late goals Forest Green scoring, how can they maintain that? How much of it's luck? I think they got beaten by a better side on Saturday. Ebbsfleet aren't they're not the side they were a few months ago. They're not going to just roll over and get beat. I think they'll set up defensively, and I think they'll invite Forest Green to try and break them down. And I think they'll be more than happy with a point. But it's a big game for Forest Green now. You don't want two losses on the bounce or a draw this week. They need to go out there and try and prove that they've got something about them and that they are still in this title race and that they are going to compete for the top. Because these results can pile up, and if they do, then that could be the difference maker between competing for the top of the table or not. And we've seen that of Oldham already this season. But it's going to be a scrappy game. Forest Green, they're not the easiest on the eye in the type of football they play. They like to play direct. They're not all about keeping it on the floor. They're all about trying to find the easiest way to get the ball in the net, which is, it's kind of stating the obvious, but, they are very direct in the way they play. They like to try and put hoof balls into the box. But, it could be an interesting one, really. Seeing that, Ebbsfleet, they gave York a bit of a fright for a little bit in the game on Saturday. It probably wasn't the game that York expected they were going to have. But I do think Forest Green will have it in them to maybe pick up 3 points here. I've gone for 2 on Forest Green. I think, it will be a battle. And I do think Forest Green's experience and, just the overall quality they have will bring them out on top and put them right back in the mix again for that top spot, keeping them there. And, they'll show that they mean business still.
Ebbsfleet, for me, are solving individual problems in recent weeks. If you actually look, for example, they're not getting thumped like they were doing. So defensively, they've been a lot stronger. They've remained a lot more competitive in games. They're giving teams a harder game. One of the issues, though, that's still there for me is the lack of goals. They haven't scored in the previous 4 National League fixtures. For me, so going forward, and that's something that's really disappointed me more about Ebbsfleet this season. Is you actually look at some of the players going forward. Dominic Purlian, someone who's been prolific in the past. Last season had quite a good season himself, and he's someone that's gone really off the boil this season. I think he's only scored 3 goals for the Fleet. As for Forest Green Rovers, they're still only got that was only their 3rd defeat away from home all season on Saturday. They'll be wanting to bounce back. And for me, Forest Green are the type of team where it doesn't particularly faze them. When sides are on form, they just find ways to win. And although they hit a hurdle on Saturday, I'd like to think they'll get back to winning ways. But I do think it'll be a really tough game. And I'm going to go for a 1-0 Forest Green win for me. For me personally, I stand by the point I made on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. I actually don't think Forest Green will be in the title race come the end of the season. I think it'll be between York and Barnet. I think if you actually watch them play, they are simply a lot better than Forest Green. If you look at the way they play, for me personally, and some of the individuals in that side, I should say, I actually think Forest Green are overperforming quite a lot, and they've got a lot smaller squad than compared to those two sides. So I do feel Forest Green may fall away from that title race. But I do think they'll win this game, and I'm going to go for a 1-0 Forest Green win. What's interesting though is a lot of York fans speaking quite positively about Ebbsfleet. York is coming, said the way Ebbsfleet played against us on Saturday, I genuinely think they hold them to a draw at the least. Also, let's be honest, Forest Green will take no fans at all. Ebbsfleet will steal a 1-0 win. Ebbsfleet didn't look like a bottom of the table side, and a fair few people actually backing Ebbsfleet to win this game as well. Moving on to the next game then that we'll have a look at now. Gateshead versus Sutton. Gateshead, for me, of course, they've got 1 win in the previous 8 games. Of course, that came against Wealdstone. Does feel like if they're going to finish inside the playoffs, it's going to be a case of them limping over the line. A question I'm going to ask you, because I think this may surprise you. Gateshead, where would you expect them to be in the possession table at the moment. Where do you think Gateshead are actually positioned?
I see. Based off the way that I've seen them play, I haven't particularly seen as much as I'd like to of them play under Magny, but I would expect them to be fairly high up on that possession table. They like to control the ball, play out from the back. But based on the question, I assume they're probably quite low down on it.
Yeah. Do you want to give a guess?
I'm going to go 14th.
You're not too far off. They're actually 11th, which I think is a bit of a surprise. For me, I've always seen Gateshead as like one of the sides that keeps the ball the best in the division. I think last season they were particularly good at that, and for the first half of the season. But the squad's been dismantled so much with the amount of players that have left the side and the amount of incomings, and they've really struggled. I think in previous years, and even this season earlier on, when they were getting injuries to players and when players were leaving the club, they actually dealt with those outgoings perfectly. The recruitment's been spot on. Maybe is it catching up with them now where they're losing a number of players, another managerial change, and it's not going to plan like it has done in the past. For me personally, I actually think that is the case. And I do think Gateshead are going to struggle and perhaps fall outside of the playoffs, because you look at sides below them, they're all on form at the moment. All looking like they're going to climb into the playoffs. And yes, Gateshead have got a bit of a cushion at the moment from that work that they did in the first half of the season, but there's still a long way to go. There's still 17, 18 games to go. So for me personally, I think Gateshead are going to really struggle this season, particularly when you see your Altrinchams, your Halifaxes, and even your Rochdales, if they can win those games in hand. I think they're going to struggle a little bit. As for Sutton, they do a lot better against the better sides in the division as well. York, of course, they defeated Solihull. They've got a good point against Barnet and Oldham and even Halifax as well. So for me, I'm actually going to go for Sutton to win this game 2-0. Of course, Gateshead losing on Saturday as well to Altrincham. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, so on Gateshead, as you mentioned, it does feel like they're kind of trying to limp over the line at the moment a little bit. I do feel like this season it's been probably the third season in a row now that they've kind of been dismantled in January and lost a few big names. This season, I think it's probably been the biggest drop-off that they've seen post-January. I think they've struggled a lot more, the likes of where last season, you lose a centre forward and you bring in the likes of Dagenham Brown, who went and scored bagfuls for them. They added Louis Flower from Brighton and he's not really got going quite yet. Recent additions like Jack Rolls and Brandon Horton and stuff, they're yet to kind of be identified as to whether they're going to be good signings or not. But it does really feel like they're struggling. It doesn't really feel like the Gateshead of the last few seasons. They seem to seem to be a bit more gritty, and they seem to kind of be holding games a lot closer than they did before. They don't seem to kind of have that nip on the ball that they used to have, where they can, dismantle a team with a passage of play. Will that be a case of, new manager has to let things settle and, find his feet a little bit? Maybe. But as it stands, I think you're right in the way that I think they will probably struggle come the end of the season. And, it is going to be a real tight finish for them, whether they do make it in the playoffs or not. On to Sutton. Like you said, they have a good record against these big teams. They're not a side who go out and look to, dismantle a team like the Gateshead of the start of the season, where they'll go out and try and pick a team apart. They will be, they'll be physical. They'll try and rough you up. They like to play down the wings, deliver into the box to a big target man who is in Davies, who is on fire at the moment. So, you've got to take that into account, that he can't stop scoring goals. But, a midweek game away at Gateshead is always going to be a bit of a difficult one. It's a long travel journey. It's always whether they, travel the night before or not, you always got to take that into account. And, after a loss for Gateshead at the weekend, I do think they need to bounce back. I've gone for a 1-1 draw in this. I just think that it will be quite a tight game, scrappy game. I do think that, there's been quite a lot of changes in Sutton's backline in recent weeks. They've kind of flip-flopped between a few players. And I think Gateshead will be able to exploit that backline. But I also don't think they're in the form at the moment to be able to hold Sutton to gain 3 points. So I've gone for a 1-1 draw.
We've also had Christopher who's coming. So Loose Flowers injured until April. We signed a striker from Hull until the end of the season. So as his replacement, he's also gone for a 1-1 draw. We've had a few people in here, a few people going for Sutton wins. Also, to be fair, it's quite split. A few people also going for Gateshead wins as well. Just short of 60 people watching at the moment. Please remember to get involved in the live chat. Put your predictions in. Don't be afraid to comment as well. Of course, if you do want to carry on, just not saying anything, then that is totally fine as well. But these are live chat there for you to get involved as well if you would like to. We've also got the next game that we'll have a look at then. Hartlepool looking to get inside the playoffs. They've certainly improved on where they were for the first quarter of the season or so. Currently just outside of the playoffs, but it does feel they've been in that kind of 12th to 8th patch now for a couple of months, and they haven't perhaps climbed into the playoffs like I thought they initially would do as quickly as I thought. And of course, a big game for them coming up against probably the most informed side in the division in Altrincham.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against Altrincham at the moment. You know, they play some beautiful football. It's finally starting to really come together since, you know, I know it did earlier in the season, but now they really look a force, and you know they don't seem to be missing Con Clark's goals from last season. That signing of Tom Crawford, you know, there was a few question marks around that at the beginning of the season, but he's really kicked on, and you know he's found his feet in this team, and they're playing some brilliant stuff at the moment. Hartlepool, of course, they've just appointed Limbrick as their head coach now. He's not second in charge now, and although at face value that is maybe the decision Hartlepool fans wanted to see, from his time at Woking, Limbrick is a very, very technical manager. He likes to play possession-based football, play out from the back. I don't know if Hartlepool have the kind of players to play that at the moment. So one thing that does concern me maybe is that Limbrick's going to be forced into playing a way that he doesn't want to, or he tries to force players that can't play the way he wants to into that system. Neither of which will benefit them. But in recent weeks, I do like the additions of Reyes Cleary and Sam Falarin. They're both tidy, tricky wingers. They needed a bit more pace in that side, a bit more directness, and I think that's kind of, you know, it has shown that, you know, especially Cleary, he's in form. He's playing very well at the moment. I think he got a goal and assist the other day as well. But like you said, they do seem to just struggle at times to get that first goal and really, really actually punish a team when they're on top. And, you know, putting all that together in this kind of game, I think I have to back Altrincham again. So I've gone for a 1-0 Altrincham. I think it'll be quite a tight-knit game. I think it's, you know, Hartlepool will look to bully them. They'll play a bit more direct to a target man, you know, whether that's Medina or Disaruvwe, you know, they always use him as an outlet. I think Altrincham will go out and they'll instigate their game plan. I think they'll try and knock the ball around. I think they'll probably pick them apart and win 1-0.
That would actually be Hartlepool's first defeat at home since Darryl Sarr actually left the club. But to be fair, against an Altrincham side at the moment, I wouldn't put it past Altrincham going there and actually winning. I'm going to go for a draw, though. Like I said, Hartlepool overall probably dropped a lot of silly points at home. For example, Maidenhead on Saturday, perhaps. But overall, still unbeaten at home. Altrincham in brilliant form at the moment. I'm going to actually go for a 1-1 draw for this game. The actual last time Hartlepool lost at home, for anyone that was interested, was actually on the 24th of September, which just says quite a lot, to be fair, compared to where they were. And that came against Rochdale as well, when they were on decent form themselves. Question I've got to ask you as well, if you look at Hartlepool, it's hard to really say about the fan base at the moment. Do you think Hartlepool's current position, they're underperforming, or?
It's a tricky one, really, because I do think, you know, they were unsettled from the minute one, really, at the start of the season. It didn't work out with Darren Saul for whatever reason. But if you look at the squad they've got, personnel-wise, I do think that squad is one that should be competing for the top 7. You know, Disaruvwe is a very, very proven striker at this level. You know, the likes of Adam Campbell, he's not particularly playing his best football at the moment, but you'd think off the back of a promotion to League One with Crawley last season, you know, that was seen as a marquee signing, quite a big name that came in. I think they have got it pretty well. I think they've done pretty well for themselves in the transfer market. They've added some really good players, and it just doesn't seem to all quite come together They don't seem to quite find that consistency. And whether that is to do with, players coming in and out, someone mentioned Mancini, he's on his day one of the best players at this level, I think. But, he can't keep that consistency of staying fit. And I think that comes back to bite them in the end because, if you're having to chop and change a team so much, no matter how good they are, it's obviously going to unsettle you. But no, I would say on paper, they're underperforming and they're probably not where they would want to be nor should be. But if you look at how the season's gone, I think they're actually in quite a good position, and I think it could be a lot worse off for them.
Moving on to the next fixture now that we'll have a look at, Oldham against Maidenhead. Of course, Oldham will be wanting to get back to winning ways after dropping points against Sutton. You look at the previous 2 home games, they've done so well at that away form to then come back to Boundary Park and drop points against Altrincham and then Sutton. Perhaps you could say they're reverting back to last season's bad habits of actually doing well away from home but then dropping points at home. Do you think it's that issue's coming back again at Oldham?
Yeah, it does seem to be. They seem to have another few shaky draws at home recently. It's tricky to say. They've had a few injuries. Manny Month's out for a little bit now. But then there's a few others. I can't quite think off the top of my head who else is out. But there's a few bodies at the moment out for them, which isn't ideal. They've chopped and changed the team a lot. So as I said, same concept goes for them as it does with Hartlepool. Having to bring players in and out, and not really finding much consistency with your lineups. It definitely doesn't help. There's a few comments online over the weekend about how the pitch wasn't in very good condition. It's not just like an away game. They will have to play on that for the rest of the season. I know both teams are playing on the same pitch, but it definitely doesn't help. But I don't know. They seem to be in a bit of a weird limbo spot right now. All in all, I do think they should be happy with where they are, 4th in the league, and I think they will stay there. But it's not been the best of periods for them. I think in terms of the game this weekend or this midweek for them, I think it's going to be a right old battle. It's 2 teams that they're not particularly footballing based teams. They're not going to go out and try and play each other off the park. It's going to be gritty. It's going to be physical. It's going to be a lot of direct football. It may not appeal to the fans too much, but that's just how it is. Especially when it's against a team like Maidenhead, they're very, very good at making you play or stoop down to their standard of playing direct football, winning duels, having to battle a lot rather than getting the ball on the floor and playing the football you want to play. And I think it's going to be another tough test for them. Maidenhead always come as a tough test to most teams at this level, no matter where they are in the league. They're kind of a staple of the division, really, showing you that even the part-time teams at this level are always going to be a test. But I do think, I think Oldham will have it in them to go and pick up a result. Travelling so far up north for a part-time team midweek as well for Maidenhead, that is something I think I have to take into account. But yeah, I've gone for a 1-0 Oldham. I think Maidenhead at times this season have struggled to find the back of the net and have conceded a lot of goals as well. But Oldham they're not in the best of form, but I still think they'll have enough quality to see it over the line and pick up 3 points.
Everyone's mentioned about. I'm not going to pretend that I've seen him play because I haven't. To be honest, is it Tom Pett, I believe, who Oldham have brought in, and he's a replacement for Clucas. I have to say, I saw Clucas play for Oldham, and I've seen him in the past as well. For me personally, and I might be way off the mark here, but it feels like the biggest loss for Oldham for me was actually losing him. If you actually look at your home form, I think the midfield's pivotal for how well you do at home for me. Of course, midfield's a big position in any football, but if you've got ball playing midfielders that can carry the ball forward and spread the ball across the pitch, well, then you're going to do a lot better at home for me because you're the side who's got to take the game to the opposition, and that's something that Clucas did exceptionally well for Oldham. Whereas you've lost him now, the midfield's a bit unsettled. You brought in Tom Pett. A lot of Oldham fans have said that he's a really good player. He's got a bad track injury record. Is he as good as Clucas, though? For me personally, no. I know Clucas is a lot older, but he also played at a lot higher level. And you don't lose your passing ability. For me personally, the older you get, you lose your speed. and your agility for me. So I actually think they're weaker in the midfield, and that's probably why they're not doing as well at home as what they are doing. I actually went to Oldham versus York a couple of weeks ago. Oh, that's good. That's gone off. I went to Oldham versus York a couple of weeks ago. And yes, a lot of Oldham fans have said they're very different to that side then. And I agree. I think they actually are. I think they've improved. You look at the results, they've certainly improved. But just from a game that I saw for the full 90 minutes live, it did feel like that midfield, it was non-existent. And it were like the Oldham of last season. So for me personally, I don't know. I just feel Oldham at home. I just don't think they're going to be as strong. I say that. I do expect them to get back to winning ways against Maidenhead. I'm actually going to go, I said 1-0. I'll go 2-0 just to change it up a little bit. Another question for you on Oldham. Do you actually think that this Oldham side now is as strong as that first half of the season? Because I certainly don't, for the reasons that I've just mentioned there.
Yeah, simply put, I don't think so either. No, no, I think a lot of and I think it's quite telling that, you know, when you lose Clucas and you lose Stones and your form drops and it coincides with that, it tells you a lot about how good those two players were. Like you said with Clucas, I do think it probably is a bigger loss for them. You know, and you mentioned that about their home games and how that affects it. You know, Clucas was a very good dictator in the midfield for them. He got the ball, put his foot on it, you know, controlled the tempo of the game and, you know, let them play at the pace they want to, rather than having to, you know, match another tempo of the opposition. You know, Pet's come in and he's good. He is good. And I do think in terms of quality, he's probably as good a player you can get at this level to replace someone like Clucas. But he's still not, still isn't Clucas, you know, and I think Clucas is, you know, kind of a one-of-a-kind player at this level where you don't see that kind of quality very often. So it's no shock to me he's gone back up to League One. But I don't think they're as strong. And I think, like you said, I think they're also a bit more unsettled. They've signed a hell of a lot of midfielders in the January window. You know, they've added Pritchard, Worthington, Corey Evans, although he's injured, Jordan Rossiter, Yoga Nathan from Barnsley, Tom Pett. You know, that's 6 midfielders with only one going really, or one key midfielder leaving the club. And you know, if you bring in that many players in, there is a lot of instability in what you're doing because you have to chop and change a lot. And the same goes when you bring in injury-prone players. You don't get that consistency that you want out of your team and out of the style of play you're playing because, you know, you have to try and change these players and they don't get the consistent minutes that they need to settle in. So I do think there's less quality in the squad, but more numbers. Well, there is more numbers, but there's definitely less quality. I don't know if Tom Conlon's back soon, but I think he's set to be back. Actually. Yeah, I think that will be quite a big difference for them when they come in. I think he's very good at, you know, controlling the tempo of the game, and he adds a bit of leadership to that midfield too. I think him and Pett in midfield together could be quite dangerous, and that again could be another turning point for Oldham in this season. But yeah, I definitely think they're probably lacking, you know, that real star quality in the team. But you know, I think it's probably near impossible to replace the likes of Clucas and probably Stones as well at this stage in the season.
Something else I've mentioned about Oldham as well, and I've never really seen it. I can't pronounce his name. They sent a lad from Rochdale at the start of the season, and he looked like he would be that player. And then they also had Dummons as well going forward.
Yeah.
I know there were rumours about him returning. I don't believe he has, to be honest, either. As of yet, I might be wrong when I say that. I feel like I heard that he'd signed for them. But I know
he has yet. No, I don't think he's quite back. No.
He was rumoured to return, and he's a player as me. I saw him against Halifax, and he tore us apart. He was a great player for Oldham, but for me, I don't think they've got much flair in that team, and they never have done since they actually dropped down into this division. I look at players. I don't know where this lad is now, but I know he was about looking for a club like he caught his seniors or someone like that. And I don't understand why an Oldham wouldn't be going in for a player like that. Even like seeing Oluwabori, I know we made this step up 2 divisions, but of course he was at Halifax. Yes, he's a little bit raw, but he brings something different to the team. And that's something that I look throughout this Oldham side, and it's very similar. And yes, it's structured, but there isn't any like individuals that stand out to me like there was. Of course, Josh Stone certainly stood out. I'm going to boost up York's ego here, but I think that has proven to be a massive loss. I've still got questions about that with York, even though he has scored a hat-trick. I still think that's going to be an issue long-term for them this season. But they've certainly done what they set out to do, and they've weakened the title contender. That is something that York have done. They've weakened Oldham. It's proven that they have. I still stand by the point when I look at York and I look at them going forward there now. What's actually going to happen? They brought Pierce back into the team after Stones has scored a hat-trick. He was then benched. Pierce has then gone and scored 2 goals. So yes, it's all smooth now and everything. What's going to happen? What's going to happen long term? Because I can tell you something. Stones has just got a hat-trick. There's no way he's happy that he has been benched. No player would be. If I had scored a hat-trick for my team, if I was in his position, and then I got benched the week after a player had just been suspended just so he could come back, for me personally, I would not be happy with that. And that's just me personally. But I think everyone in this live chat would be as well if they were actually in his position too. Sam, is that something you agree with?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think someone did say possibly earlier Stones had a bit of a hamstring problem, and that's why he didn't start on the bench.
I heard that, but then he was on the bench. So I didn't blame on. That's what I don't understand. Because if a player's injured, then you wouldn't have him on the bench, would you?
Yeah, it does seem to be a bit of a strange one. But personally, if he was fit to play, and you look at that team sheet and you go and you don't see yourself on it, you'd be disappointed. And if Pierce maybe had a knock and he came back and the manager thought, okay, you'd be better suited for this game or whatever, then fair enough. But it's the fact that Pierce got suspended and that's his own doing. That should be the opportunity Stones deserves to get into the team. He's taken that opportunity and it's not really paid off for him. But I do think it's, like you said, it is going to be interesting to see how they manage both their game times. I do think York have to stick to the way that they play. If they don't stick to the way they play, I think they've shown that a few times this season already. It does seem to, I wouldn't say that they crumble, but they do seem to struggle to break teams down, and the shape doesn't seem to suit their style as much. But yeah, I do get your concern with how they work Stones and Pierce going forward. But if they go and win the league, I'm sure I'm sure they won't complain too much.
No, I still think they will go and win the league, but I think there'll be an issue with this in terms of the dressing room with those 2 individuals, because you've got 2 strikers there that could probably do a job in League 2, if not League 1. I just feel like Josh Stones is wasted at York. He's gone and scored a hat-trick and then he gets benched. If he was in another side, he could be exceptional. And he was at Oldham. And for me now, he's been dropped back down to the bench. Thomas, you've come in and you've said, Pierce is the top scorer in the league. He comes back into anyone's side. Yeah, but you've just dropped a lad that just scored a hat-trick. So I don't understand your point. You've literally dropped someone who just scored a hat-trick. He's not going to be happy that he's been dropped. That's what I'm saying. Pierce has come back in. Whereas if you'd have kept Stones in because he'd scored a hat-trick, Pierce won't be happy because he's the top goal scorer in the league. So you've kind of just proven my point there. Someone said it's nice to have a problem like York with loads of options trying to buy the league. Fair play. And then we've also had wasted at York. I genuinely think he is for his ability. I think him sitting on the bench for the top goal scorer, which it is going to be going forward now, I think that is a player that's wasted. At Oldham, he could have gone on to probably score 20 goals, if not more, this season, whereas he's not going to be able to score that many goals for York now because you've got Pierce who's going to start over in most weeks. And it's vice versa as well. If Stones started, then you'd say Pierce is wasted on the bench. That's just my opinion on it. Anyway, we'll move on from that because I speak about it every single week and I'm not changing my mind on that either. Southend versus Aldershot then. Of course, just short of 70 people watching, by the way. Please remember to like and subscribe. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you disagree with anything we say, we don't mind. That's what it's all about. To be fair, just let us know. Southend versus Aldershot then. Southend hunting down a playoff spot. Aldershot looking to try get over the line this season and I think rebuild for next season now for them. I'm going to back Southend to win. They're on decent form at the moment. Of course, a point against Rochdale and beating my team, Halifax. And I think they'll be able to get another win against an Aldershot side that are out of form. So I've actually gone 2-0 Southend. How do you see it going?
Yeah, it's a tricky one to predict this because with Southend, they're in a decent little patch. They picked up a few points recently, but they do seem to they do have a hiccup in them. They do seem to maybe slip up against a team down the bottom here and there. Like you said, they drop points to Maidenhead. There's been a few performances that you really have to question with Southend. I still think they're lacking that clinical centre forward. You lose Peppel earlier in the season. And they've brought in Tom Hopper, and he could well, go and score a few goals for him, and fill that void. Charlie Kendall's come in from Mycene Woking. Personally, I'm not too convinced on Kendall as a player. He works hard. He plays with his heart on his heart on his sleeve, but I think he lacks a bit of technical ability that costs him a few goals here and there. But when you look at Aldershot as well, they're a side that there's not a great feel around the club. There's questions surrounding the manager at the moment and regarding his tactics and his player selections. But they do have some quality in their team, regardless as to where they are in the league. So I think this goes down for me as arguably the trickiest match of the game week to predict. So I think it's quite it's very going pretty obviously. It's quite an unpredictable one. I think it very much depends on which version of each side turns out on the day. Especially regarding Southend, but at home against a team who are, a little bit shaky at the back, I have gone for a 2-1 Southend win. I think, the home crowd will get behind them. They'll benefit from that. And I think Aldershot, they're a team that are really struggling at the moment. They can't quite seem to, formulate these performances and turn these draws into wins. And I think that'll come back to bite them at the weekend. And I think they'll lose 2-1 to Southend.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have backed Southend to win this game as well. Someone has actually gone for a draw there. Chris has come in and actually said this is the last thing we'll say on this topic. These lads have already covered the term buying the league this season. It's an absolute nonsense phrase. We use that phrase because it was a phrase that were going around on social media, not that we actually agreed with it. We all actually disagreed with it. We said it's clearly spending money. Can't remember even what I said, but I know I certainly didn't go out there and say York are doing anything wrong at the moment. I don't blame them. The only signing, and everyone knows it, is the Stone signing. Although it's scored a hat-trick, I still don't understand it, and I will be standing by that. And then anyway, we'll move on to the next game now. Yeovil versus Tamworth. I can probably guess your prediction for this. I reckon you've gone for a draw, and I'm going to go 0-0, I'll say.
Yeah, so I've gone for a draw as well. Yeovil are a side that are, again, they are struggling at the moment, and if I'm being totally honest, I'm not exactly surprised. There's no consistency in that Yeovil team. They've basically rebuilt the whole squad from what they had at the start of the season. No consistency in lineups. Having seen them play a few times this season, I think the tempo they play at's too slow. They don't have that kind of nip about them when they're playing the ball. They don't really look to pierce a defence. It's very lackluster, very slow paced. And, they very much rely on opposition mistakes. I don't think Tamworth are the kind of side that will make a mistake that will cost them the game. I think they're a very well structured team. They defended very well at the weekend, albeit Woking were the side that controlled the game and probably looked like the side that were going to go on to win it. Tamworth, like I said, they're very gritty. They go and see games out and they go and pick up results where you don't think they're going to. And that's what they've done all season. They turn, all set pieces into dangerous chances. They give themselves the best chance possible to put the ball in the back of the net. And I think that, with the physical presence they've got on the team, I think that Yeovil will struggle against them. I've gone for a 1-1 draw. Was very tempted to go over 0-0 too. But I think both sides will, they'll put a chance away. I can't see Yeovil keeping a clean sheet. I think they have the potential to get bullied in the box and in and around the box, and that's just what Tamworth do. They're a very physical side. I actually did a tactical breakdown on them the other week, and I highlighted that. Nathan Shakuna, they play in the 10. He's not utilised as much as Tom Tonks in the 10, and that's because they like to bypass the midfield quite a lot. So having a heavy presser in the 10 rather than a creative player actually benefits the way they play, because they're more likely to win the ball up high rather than, you know, have something created from deep. And I think Yeovil will struggle, but I also do think that they'll probably sit out a draw. So I've gone for 1-1.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will go for draws for this game. To be fair, a lot of people also going for different type of results. But I think overall, if we did a poll on Twitter for this, I think most people will be going for a draw. Yeah, for me, it's disappointing. You know, I expected them to fall away. I did mention that a lot when they were inside the playoffs or just outside. I said, nah, they'll fall away at some point, and they kept proving me wrong. But you know, finally they've kind of proven me right. You know, I look at that squad and I think on paper they probably had no right to actually be as high as up as they were. I think for me now we're just getting over the line for them. I don't think there'll be in any danger of relegation. But this is a tough game, you know, Tamworth as well. They're just getting closer and closer towards achieving the amount of points you need to secure safety this season. So yeah, I'm going to go for a 0-0 draw. Moving on to the next one, Braintree versus Wealdstone. This is on Wednesday evening, and this is a huge game for Wealdstone more than Braintree. But for Braintree, they win. I think everyone will be backing them to certainly survive then. There'll be quite a big gap between them and the drop zone if they win. If Wealdstone win, they can get out of the drop zone, and they're a side for me that need to do what they did last time when Alex Reid initially came in, and that is go on a mini run, get a couple of wins and climb away from the drop zone, because the form before Saturday's game was pretty woeful and concerning. But to go to Yeovil and get 3 points says a lot and shows to me that they've still got fight in them to be able to survive this season. But they need to back it up now with something at Braintree. And I'm actually going to go for a draw for this one, which I don't think would be the end of the world for either club, but I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
So yeah, it's two teams that are kind of in polar opposite form. I've watched the first half of the Yeovil Wealdstone game at the weekend, and to me it really did just look like two very poor teams. I think, you know, Wealdstone, it's a massive 3 points for them, but I do think come the end of the season, the inconsistency and, you know, the unsettlement of the manager departure, you know, if that plays a part, you know, part-time status as well, I do think they are going to struggle come the end of the season. Whereas Braintree, they look a very well-structured team. You know, that's what you need when you want to stay up at this league. You need structure, and you need to kind of, you know, play as that unit. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier with Braintree. I think the quality they've got in their squad is not the kind of quality that you should expect to be competing at the bottom of the division. And I think that's all kind of coming together a bit more now, which is nice to see. Like I mentioned, the few names I mentioned earlier, George Langston, I think he's up there as one of the top defenders at this division this season. You know, he's took the captain's armband for them, and he's had a pretty good year. You know, I was talking about earlier with Oldham, you know, having that midfielder who can dictate the play and control the tempo. You know, they've got James Vennings in there, and that massively benefits the side when you can control the game and play at your own pace. I do think Wealdstone will struggle again this week, and I think, you know, Braintree are riding the form, riding high on form at the moment, and being home to Braintree, the home fixture for Braintree as well, having just beat Forest Green at home as well, I think it'll be, you know, it'll be in very good spirits. So I've actually gone 2-0 Braintree. I think they'll keep up their good form, and I think they'll pick up another 3 points that pushes them closer and closer to safety.
Fair enough then, yeah. Big win for Braintree, of course, on Saturday, and it'd be an excellent result if they can back that up as well and win this one. Of course, Carl Lisby's another player, isn't he? He's been on fire at the moment. I think he's a player for me at the end of the season. Even if Braintree survive, I think he's a player that's going to get snapped up by another National League side, if not a League Two side. Another match that we're going to preview is Eastleigh versus Dagenham. One of the less attractive matches for me, to be honest, and quite a hard one to call. I say that Dagenham being right out of form, but if there was any game for me where I could see Dagenham actually getting back to winning ways, it'd be against an Eastleigh side that are just very, very inconsistent. That said, I am going to back Eastleigh to win, being the home side. Of course, they beat Aldershot the weekend, and I think they'll back it up with another 2-0 victory. How do you see it going?
Eastleigh, I agree with what you say there. Eastleigh, a very inconsistent side this year. You know, they go through little patches of playing really poorly and then playing really well and picking up results and then losing. a few on the bounce. But one consistency I do see with Eastleigh is they very rarely don't score. They do know where the back of the net is. They've had a few changes up front recently. You mentioned him earlier for regards to Oldham. Chegbalam has a bit of direct pace. They've just brought him in. They brought him in on loan a few weeks ago from Oldham, and he's played quite well. He's playing a bit more of a direct centre forward role for them, which is not something I'd expect, but it's working for them. And looking at Dagenham, that they are in real trouble. I think they're really, really struggling at the moment. And I can't see. It's going to take a big job for Lewis Young to try and pull them out of this rut, because there's a few decisions out of his control being made at the club that definitely aren't helping him. The fans are a little bit restless at the moment, and they're kind of getting on his back a bit, and the club's back. I think it was very telling the other day when Woking played them midweek. Junior Marias for us got a brace. He'd played for Dagenham earlier in the season. First thing he did, went over to the director's box and celebrated in front of them. I think that's quite telling of the situation that's going on at the moment. And Ben Strevens, he actually put out a statement regarding his sacking as well. Mentioned how literally 30 minutes after the full-time whistle on, I think it was on Boxing Day, he was dragged into the office and sacked. So it seems like there's a bit of unrest at the club, and I honestly I struggle to see where they're gonna pick up points at the moment, and where they're gonna turn around this form. So I've actually gone for a 3-1 win to Eastleigh. It's a bit more of it's a bit more out there, that result, and it's maybe my shock of the week kind of result. But I think I do really I struggle to see where Dagenham are going to be able to lift themselves up here. And I think it could be a really, really rough end to the season. I put a post out earlier where I said, I can see one of, Aldershot or Dagenham going down this season, and I'm going to stick by that. And I think Dagenham are probably leaning more towards them maybe facing the drop at the moment.
I feel like every time I get you on, we speak about Dagenham, and you're getting closer and closer to actually predicting them to go down. And I don't blame you, because the thing is about your Dagenhams, and it's just, and I think everyone will probably agree with this. Everyone thinks, oh no, Dagenham, they'll pick it up, they'll be fine. And it was the same with Boreham Wood last year. Oh no, Boreham Wood, they'll be fine. Yeovil a few years ago, they'll be fine. They're too big to go down. They've got too much quality in that squad. And they still slip through the net. And I could easily see Dagenham slipping through the net. They had a good first 10 or so games this season, and ever since they've just got worse and worse. And it feels like at the moment they're really in free fall for me. The form is just horrific. And if I was a Dagenham fan, I certainly would be looking over my shoulder at the moment. So yeah, it's concerning time. Speaking of owners, Callum's coming, who's a Yeovil fan, I believe. Helia, I think it's Hella, innit? Out.
Helia,
share the word, lads. Yeah, no, to be fair with that, that's a weird one, because Yeovil fans were actually quite positive about him at first, weren't they? And then now it's just turned very sour, hasn't it? And I know people have quite strong opinions about him. He's a bit like Ugler, I suppose, where he's quite public on social media. I know Ugler's done a lot better for York than what in contrast to what Helia has at Yeovil, to be fair. But they're both quite public, aren't they, on social media? And Hella certainly... is it Hella or Helia?
I think it's Helia. Yeah, I think it's Martin Helia, yeah. But yeah, he's...
Go on,
oh, there you go. No, go on. Oh, cool. Well, yeah, I think they're both quite vocal on social media. I'm not always a fan of that. I think, it's a bit of some unnecessary, it's unnecessary really at times. There was a thing the other week where he posted something in the evening about how he's leaving the club, he's putting it up for sale. The next morning, he's posting photos about how, Helia's never give up. We're here to stick around. But I think the big difference is between him and Ugler is Ugler puts his money where his mouth is. He invests heavily in his club. I don't think there's been the investment that Helia maybe promised. I think you've seen that in the squad. They've brought in a lot. They've had a lot of players coming out this season, but they've let go of a lot of permanent players, and you only really see a couple. You only really see loanees coming in. It doesn't really feel like that there's much ambition at Yeovil to really kick on. They had a really good start to the season, and people would maybe look at that, some owners, and think, yeah, okay, we're in a position maybe we didn't expect ourselves to be in. Let's let's try and push the squad, bring in a couple big names, and really try and kick on and turn this like kind of dream into getting the playoffs into a reality. I don't think he did that, and I think when there's unrest with the owner, I think when they can be a bit vocal, it can unsettle the club a bit. And I think there's been a few issues with him here and there between fans and him, and he's quite. I don't think he's very vocal on Twitter, but I think it's more so like Facebook and stuff like that. But
screenshots
there's
on Twitter.
Yeah, I've seen a few screenshots here and there, but it's interesting to see what happens with that, because I can kind of understand where the unrest comes from.
Yeah, I remember when he first actually became the owner of Yeovil, he did kind of put his money where his mouth was. I know Frank Nubele was quite a marquee sign, and he was at Torquay. Torquay, I think, were looking to actually sign him, and then Yeovil came in and managed to get him when they were in the National League South. They sent a few quite marquee players, and then they've come up to the National League. I remember looking at the recruitment, and I wasn't overly impressed. I thought they'd have enough to survive. And then it did feel like, well, to be fair, they're doing enough with the current squad to really put a push together to be higher mid-table, if not playoffs. And they're just simply fallen away. And it's certainly turned very, very sour there very quickly as well. I have noticed as well. We'll move on to the next fixture now, which is, of course, Halifax versus Rochdale. A derby, which makes it a huge game, but also in terms of placements, it's a huge game as well. It is in Rochdale's hands to go above Halifax with their games in hands that they have. But I will say, if Halifax win this game, it's going to be very hard for Rochdale to overtake the Sharemen. I'll come to you first. With it being my team, it's probably better that you go first.
Yeah, of course. Rochdale are a bit of a weird one at the moment. Obviously, they've had a bit of inconsistencies in actually getting matches on. Whether that affects momentum or not, I feel like it has a little bit. They've maybe not picked up some of the results they would have hoped to. They drew to Ebbsfleet quite recently. I can't quite remember what their result was at the weekend. Let me just double check that. It was... can't find it. The weekend, they drew 1-1 with Southend. That's maybe a match that they kind of they would have quite liked to go and pick up 3 points if they really want to stamp down some conviction in making a playoff charge. Halifax, we spoke about Halifax quite a lot, and they are a very, very consistent side given the amount of money that they have, and they are massively overachieving. I didn't think I've seen a little bit of the Boston game. I didn't think Halifax particularly played great, but I think a sign of a good team is that you see games out when you aren't playing very well, and that's what they did. They went and kept a clean sheet, got the goal they needed, picked up the 3 points, and I think that can be a start turning point to maybe hopefully improving that home form, and that could be the difference maker between you finishing in the playoffs or not. I've gone for a 1-0 Halifax again. I think again it's quite a professional result. I think for them. I can see them pretty much playing the same game plan, just playing gritty football, defensive style, inviting Rochdale to kind of break them down and maybe hitting them on the counter attack. I do think they could really come and hinder them this season. Rochdale maybe finding some inconsistencies with actually getting games on, and then at that point you've got so many games to catch up on. Fixture congestion is going to take it out of them. They do have quite a big squad, but it's always going to play and have an effect because even if you are playing the same players, they're going to get tired, and if you're having to rotate these players, these players aren't getting the consistent minutes they need to really flourish. So I've gone for a 1-0 Halifax. I think they're just a more consistent side this season. I think at home, I think they'll probably put on a good performance and see the game out.
Yeah, I think the lazy eye will look at Halifax's home form and probably think, oh, well, they're coming up against a Rochdale side that are high-flying in the league. Overall, I say that. I know some of the recent results have been a little disappointing. I actually think a point at Southend, although they took the lead, is actually quite a good point when I've seen Southend play. But I say that, and I think the lazy eye will, coming back to that point, I'll look at Halifax and say, well, they've got a home game against a side that are doing half decent in the league. Halifax's home form, I think it's like 17th, 16th it'll be. It might have shot up a little bit now because of that win on Saturday. And they'll go, well, Rochdale will win this game. For me personally, I think it depends on the opposition. The difference between a Fylde or even at games where we've kind of grinded out the result, like your Bostons and your Ebbsfleets, is that those sides come to the Shea not to play football. They come to put 11 men behind the ball and catch us out on the break. And that's exactly how we play. And that doesn't suit us at all. Whereas Rochdale are a high possession side. I think the third in the possession table. They'll come to play football because that's the only way they know to play is actually play possession-based football on a pitch that is horrendous. And it'll actually suit us because we will just defend and try catch them on the break, and that's something we're very good at. It is just quickly hitting teams on the break. Everyone looks at our attack and says we don't score enough goals, but I tell you something, when we don't create many chances, but the chances we do create, we often take them. And I think that'll be the case against Rochdale. It's a bit of a derby as well. I think it'll be a very open game, very end-to-end. And I think it'll be a really entertaining game, this one. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Halifax win. We talk about away attendances. I'm expecting quite a lot of fans to come from Rochdale, to be honest. I think it's only 20 minutes away. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought 2,000 plus fans, to be honest. I know they have done in the past to Oldham before. Moving on to the next game then now, and it's your team. So do you want me to go first for this one? Or
Yeah, go for it.
Of course, Woking coming up against Solihull Moors. Solihull, we say out of form, did a little bit better against Barnet at the weekend. Yeah, it's a hard one to call. For me personally, I don't think these two sides are going to have much to play for in the upcoming weeks. I think Woking are kind of climbing towards safety now. And I think Solihull, for me, I look at the form and I look at them under Matt Taylor, and I don't think we'll be talking about them being a playoff contender. Of course, currently they are, like Woking are, overall currently still considered a relegation candidate. For me personally, I think in terms of quality on the way both sides are playing at the moment, I actually think Woking are probably the better side. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, though, for this one. How do you see it going?
I don't blame you for a 1-1 draw. I think four of Ardley's National League results, 4 of his last 5 National League results have been 1-1 draws. I'm looking at this game and I am absolutely delighted. I think we couldn't be playing Solihull at a better time. You know, they are in probably the worst form they've been in all season. You know, I would be very surprised if we were to go and lose this game. There is a big part of me, like you, that wanted to go and put 1-1. You know, it's hard to really put a finger on Solihull, what they're gonna do. You know, they've brought in a few youngsters on loan. They've had a bit of a squad. I wouldn't say squad overhaul, but you know, they've added a few loanees. You know, Ollie Wright's come in because Killian Barrett went back from his loan. You know, they added the likes of Jack Wells-Morrison, Ethan Sutherland, Fletcher Holman, who's off the mark now. And they did give Barnet a little bit of a test at the weekend. Equalised, maybe made the game a lot tighter than maybe some would predict. But seeing Woking play in the last few weeks, I'm really confident going into this game. You know, we like to push the fullbacks up high. You know, Solihull fans will be they'll be familiar with the way that Ardley plays. Likes to push the fullbacks up high, control the game, keep the ball. Big forward up top, so we can go direct if we need to. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Woking win. You know, I can see the game going similarly to how it did against Dagenham midweek. You know, we were the better side. The only thing that does concern me a little bit sometimes is we do look to really sit deep once we go a goal up. I think that is maybe a concern we had with Tamworth at the weekend. We did very, very evidently drop deep. Kind of just tried to defend the 1-goal lead. And I think if we just kept playing the way we were, we would have probably seen the game out. And that might be a reason as to why we draw so many games 1-1. But I think, you know, we haven't. One thing I will say with Ardley, we maybe haven't kept as many clean sheets as we wanted to. But I can see us picking up 3 points at the weekend and, you know, taking advantage of the poor form that Solihull are in. And I'm going to go for a 2-1 Woking win.
Fair enough. Then back in your own team. Of course, Woking are on a lot better form at the moment. Yes, a few draws, like I mentioned, and you've mentioned there. But in terms of form overall, they've been a lot more competitive, where Solihull are in free fall themselves at the moment. I don't think we'll be considering them a relegation candidate at any point, though, because of the work they did in the first half of the season. But for me, I think playoffs is fading away quickly. The final game then that we're going to actually preview, of course, it should have been the second game, but we had to leave this one till last. Barnet top of the league Barnet up against second place York. We say second place York, it's in York's hands to actually go top. If York win this game and they win those games in hands as well, they have the ability to actually go 5 points clear at the top, which would probably be the biggest margin that we've had all season. It's a really hard one to actually think how both sides are actually going to go into this game, how they're going to set up. Are Barnet going to go into it thinking we can't afford to lose this one, otherwise it's going to be a 5 point gap potentially, so we're going to go for the draw? York, will they look at it? It's a Tuesday night. Barnet are currently top. It's in our hands still. If we get a point away at Barnet, would that be a good point? Or will York go into this thinking, you know what, we can go to Barnet, we can win this game, and then we can actually break away from, you know, your Barnets and your Forest Greens below us. How do you think, firstly, the sides are going to approach this game?
It's tricky. If I'm being totally honest, I think both teams, I don't think they'll change much. I think they're both two teams who have found a lot of success in the way that they play. So I think they'll look to just go out and play less football. And I think the team that can find, you know, the most comfort in their game at the week, midweek will probably be the one who comes out with a result. You know, York like to play that fluid attacking football. Maybe aren't as strong defensively as Barnet are, but they are a side who are, you know, they play that risk over reward. They play very fluid football, and they can break a team down with a passage of play and very easy on the eye. You know, Barnet is similar, but they, you know, and going to Barnet as well, but them being the home side, it is, you know, that's a big advantage for Barnet, I think. Or it could be. Seeing that, you know, York have sold a hell of a lot of tickets, you know, that could really stir things up. But Barnet have made their home ground an absolute fortress this season. You know, I can't remember the last time they lost at home.
In the league, it was the 24th of February last season against Chesterfield. In the playoffs, it was against Solihull.
So that's an unbelievable record, isn't it? You know, they haven't lost at home this season. But I don't think they've hosted anyone as good as York this season either. So, you know, it'll be very, very tricky. It'll be a tricky game for them, probably their biggest test yet. And, you know, we've mentioned in the past, you know, Barnet's ability to you know, perform and turn up in the big games. And that'll be a massive question mark over their heads at the moment, because they do have a slight track record of maybe not turning up in the big matches that are going to, you know, define their season. But yeah, in terms of the result, I think I'm gonna sit on the fence, and I've gone with a 2-2 draw. I think it's going to be two very, very good teams that are competing. I think there won't be very much between them, and, you know, I think a draw will be what we see.
Oh, you've put a lot of pressure on me now to go for a different result. Tactically, for the predictions league, I went for 2-2. That'd be perfect, because the gap of 5 points would be perfect for when Paul's back for me to extend it. But that'd be boring, to be fair, wouldn't it? Barnet have got the 2 most goals in the league, but York and Barnet have both got the leading the amount of goals that they both score. Both have got the most clean sheets. Both have got the top 2 most amount of shots. I think these two, for me personally, if you actually watch them both play, are way above the rest of the division. I think both sides are a lot better than Forest Green. I think Forest Green are just very good at grinding out results. I think in terms of quality, I think these two are clear. Oldham at one point before Christmas, I thought they could have joined the equation. Certainly not now. It's a really hard one to call. You know, we speak about Barnet being unbeaten for so long at home. Yet if there was any side who could actually go there and win, you'd probably say it's York. I think you could go for any prediction for this game.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
I'll go for Barnet win now. The issue is I'll have a bunch of York fans saying, "Oh, he hates us lot. That's why he's got an agenda against us." So I've got to be careful what I say. But I put down 2-2 and 3-2 Barnet. So it's a hard one. It's a hard one to call. 3-2. I'm going 3-2 Barnet, and I don't want one York fan coming on here and saying I have an agenda. I'm going for a different prediction to Sam. I think there'll be goals. I think the clean sheet thing will go out of the window. You know, I spoke earlier about ways they could approach this game. But to be fair, I think both sides will just be going into it saying we're going to try and outscore you, you lot. So for me personally, yeah, I am going to go for Barnet to win this game 3-2. But I think this is probably one of the hardest games to call. It's a really, really unpredictable game, this one. And it's certainly one that, fortunately, Halifax playing on the Wednesday, so I am able to tune into this game. And I am certainly going to be looking forward to this one. So yeah, that's going to wrap up the predictions. Have you got anything to add just on the predictions, or?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a really tricky match week to predict. Really, there's a few people in the comments already saying talking about the agenda. I've had the same with Oldham fans. They're not too fond of me based off of a few opinions that I've had. So you're in the same boat as me. You know, no one's ever going to be happy. You can't please everyone with your predictions, but you know, like I said, this probably for me it looks to me as one of the trickiest match days to predict. So like I said, some very, very tight knit matches. But yeah, it's always worth giving it a go. So yeah, no, it's been good.
I've got a question as well for the live chat. I'll get this is the predictions league for those who weren't with us when I showed it earlier. I am still in the lead. Paul never has a week as good as that. Rob had a magnificent week, gaining 12 points. I actually did half decent myself, gaining 9. It's been a long time since we've had some scores like that. The actual record, for anyone that's interested in the amount of points, was 15 points in one game week, which I think was the season, not last year, but the year before when Wrexham and Notts County were in the league. So that's the record for the most amount of points. I've got a question for the live chat before we do wrap things up. We say about Rochdale, right, and me wearing a Rochdale shirt at the end of the season because they're meant to be probably the biggest rivals that we've got in this division. I'll change it up a little bit because I think it'd be more entertaining. If I lose the predictions league, which if Paul's back, I'm pretty confident I won't. If we keep skiering off, then I probably will end up. They will end up catching me. I'll wear a York City shirt to change things up because I think that'd be a bit more entertaining, to be fair. So yeah, I'll change that up. I'm going to wear a York City shirt if I lose the predictions league. Sam, once again, I really do appreciate you coming on. You've made loads of appearances recently, and I know you're probably a very busy man and stuff at university. So I do appreciate you coming on once again.
No, it's all right, mate. I enjoy coming on. I jump at any opportunity I can, really, for it. You know, I'll always happily make the time to make an appearance. You know, it's always good fun. So yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, I know we don't. To be fair, the predictions preview show don't usually go on as long as this, but whenever I get you on, because you've got a lot to say, good thing, by the way, it always seems to go on for like an hour and a half plus, to be fair.
I could talk about National League forever and ever. The list goes on about things I could talk about. So yeah, it's always a pleasure to be on. You know, it gives me a chance to try kind of, you know, just speak about the kind of the niche that, you know, I've kind of grown to love. So yeah, it's brilliant.
Brilliant. Someone said you need to get stones on the back. How much would that even be? If get Matt Ugler to pay for it, to be fair, and I will do that. But no, like I do. Once again, I appreciate everyone that's tuned in tonight. It's been a good laugh once again. Let us know your predictions in the comments below. If you want to become a channel member, any York fans perhaps want to become a channel member, you get to use your emoji in the live chat. You can spam that if you want, and you also get early access to interviews that we've done in the past. It's just £2.99 a month. I do appreciate that if anyone who wants to do that. Or if you want to just subscribe to the channel, that's appreciated as well. And like and do all that kind of stuff. Everyone knows the drill by now. But yeah, Sam, once again, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate everyone that's tuned in. And I will see you all next time. Bye for now.